I'm Erika Meltzer, city reporter with the Daily Camera, and I'm here with Heather Bailey to talk about municipalization. Thanks for coming in.
Sure, thank you.
I was hoping you could start by maybe giving us an overview of the various municipalization options and what are the pros and cons of phasing out with Xcel Energy over 5 years or starting with day one with the city pursuing its own power supply.
Sure. Well, what we did is we looked at 5 different options plus a baseline, which is Xcel, status quo. And our analysis was to compare these options to a status quo, which would be Xcel. Those options are, the first one, as you mentioned, forming a municipal utility and then phasing out power purchases with Xcel over 5 years. At the end of 5 years, then purchasing power independently, increasing the renewable portfolio and moving towards achieving the greenhouse gas reduction goals. There are 2 other options called low cost. One was low cost and another was low cost, no coal. And that's where we looked at a resource portfolio that solved for the lowest price power. And so the low cost with coal includes, obviously, probably purchases from the market, which could include Xcel. And coal made up about 25% of that portfolio. So you don't achieve greenhouse gas reductions as quickly, but you move very quickly towards doing that. I think you basically could cut them in half compared to staying with Xcel. Then the low cost, no coal, again, was buying from the market, but excluding any purchases of coal-based power. And that, of course, moved you closer to reducing greenhouse gas targets and increasing renewables. Then we had 2 other options. One was called, and then we call them our aggressive greenhouse gas options. And that's where we said, okay, how far can we get with a renewable portfolio where we really aggressively solve for reducing greenhouse gases? And the first one was just straight out buying power from the market, with a high focus on renewables, obviously, and energy efficiency and other things. The second one of those was actually increasing our energy efficiency programs. Now, we currently have the cap tax that funds energy efficiency and demand-side management. Well, we basically tripled that and said, okay, what would be the outcome and the cost of that? Those 2 options didn't make the cut with respect to the metrics, only in the area of rate parity. So in today's market, they were a little bit high. In the future, it could be a very different story, but for now, they were the ones that didn't pass the rate parity test.
And the rate parity test is offering rates that would be comparable or less than what Xcel.
Yes, correct. And the other question you asked, I wanted to follow up. What would be the benefit of phasing out power purchases from Xcel versus just going to the market? And basically, we looked at the phase-out option with Xcel as a low-risk option. It minimizes the transition between going from being served by Xcel to being totally independent. So it's a sort of a risk mitigation strategy. We can get to our goals. It just takes a little bit longer. If we went immediately to buying on the market, which is possible, then we very quickly hit basically almost a 50% reduction in greenhouse gas.
How are you able to do that so quickly while still offering rates that are comparable with Xcel? Because what we typically hear is that to bring a lot of renewables online would be a lot more expensive.
It's going to be expensive. And I hear that a lot too. The good news is, well, there's a couple of things. Gas prices are very low, and gas would be part of that portfolio. So that brings down the cost. And wind, the purchase of wind power has become very competitive. Renewables are becoming more and more competitive with other sources of power. And so we're able to do that through purchase power contracts with other entities. And we got some indicative pricing that helped us form our opinion. So we feel pretty comfortable with the prices and the costs that we modeled.
What's going to change for customers on day one if Boulder forms its own utility?
Well, hopefully the only thing that changes is the power supply is a lot greener and greenhouse gas emissions go down. Reliability should be the same. Services should be the same. Rates should be comparable or less. So in an ideal world, on day one, you wouldn't see a lot of change.
And what are some of the things that you are planning on doing to make sure that the reliability is the same as Excel, which has a lot of redundancy, is a much larger entity?
And just to clarify, larger doesn't mean more reliable. And we're looking at the distribution system, which is really just a system that's encased in Boulder and the surrounding area. Excel will still own and maintain that larger regional system, the transmission system. So you shouldn't see any change in that. The redundancy of the transmission system should be exactly the same. And the redundancy of the distribution system should be exactly the same because we are buying the system intact. And we're looking at the interconnections to be at substations at very clear delineation points, which should minimize the impact. A big question with reliability is response time and the ability to maintain the system. We have modeled best practices. We've looked at other comparable utilities that have best practices like Fort Collins, looked at the type of staffing and requirements they have, and basically modeled that and incorporated those costs in our budgeting. We also looked at things like, a big concern I heard was, well, what if you have a natural disaster like a big ice storm or a fire? How can a small utility like Boulder possibly respond and restore power? Well, that's an issue across the country. And what municipalities and other small utilities have done, and even large ones like Excel, they've entered into what's called a mutual aid agreement. And what mutual aid agreements do is they say, okay, for example, if we had one with Fort Collins, if we got into a situation where we had fires and we were low on crews, could you send help, trucks, materials, people? And they do that. And that's a very common practice in the industry. That's what happened in Hurricane Sandy in New York. That's what happened in New Orleans with Katrina. So that would be what we would put in place.
And what guarantees do people have that the rates will continue to be comparable to what people in the surrounding area are paying as we move forward?
Well, I don't know that there's any better guarantee than with Excel. Well, I should say there probably is a better guarantee than with Excel because in the charter that describes what municipalization would look like, there's a provision that says our rates need to be comparable or competitive with surrounding areas. So we have a charter language requirement that says that's what we need to do.
Can you talk a little bit more about the role of natural gas in the portfolio? That's obviously been a controversial issue with fracking, and what, if anything, you can do to minimize the environmental impact of those natural gas supplies?
And that's a good question, and that's a valid concern. In our portfolio, we've looked at replacing coal with renewables, but also there will be, especially early on, a significant portion that's natural gas. Natural gas is a clean fuel. However, there are environmental implications with fracking. What we are looking at right now as part of this next phase is how do you structure contracts and power agreements to buy basically non-fracked gas. And so we're looking at the possibility of that and what would be the implications.
When you did this modeling, there was dozens of inputs, and when you look at the uncertainties of the future, what are the factors that could possibly, if they changed, could put us on a different path or make this not play out the way that everyone's hoping?
Well, as you know, we modeled some sensitivities and found the things that had the greatest impact that would, in essence, move the mark one way or the other. Interest rates, the price of natural gas, which obviously drives the price of power everywhere, and it impacts a municipal utility as well as Excel. Carbon tax. Carbon tax could have a huge impact on the price of power that Excel pays, but maybe a positive impact on what happens with a muni-owned utility. We had the price of wind was significant, and O&M costs. So movement, what we did is we looked at a bandwidth, a very wide bandwidth of how those prices or costs could move. And that's how we modeled the risk and whether the cost would put us out of the mark. And so through doing that, we were able to identify where we might have issues. And as the report shows, in the phase-out option and the two low-cost options, with a wide variation in those costs, we could still meet the price metric. Obviously, in the aggressive greenhouse gas options, with gas prices either declining or renewable prices increasing, like wind prices increasing, that would have a detrimental effect and make those even more less cost competitive, I should say. So those things could impact the metric, but we tried to take that into consideration when we modeled the risk to show where it would.
And is it your feeling that those factors would also impact rates for Excel if the city were to stay with Excel?
Yes, they would. In fact, they would have, some of them would have a pretty significant impact. We didn't model all of those on the Excel base case. We incorporated a carbon tax. We incorporated some changes to interest rates, and I believe we incorporated the gas prices also, but we didn't do the full spectrum. But we did want to see the sensitivity of Excel to those issues.
A lot of the modeling is based on power purchase agreements. What sort of role do you see for local generation and in the future? And what are some other ways in which the utility of the future, which is a phrase that we hear, in what other ways might it look different than what we have today?
Well, power purchase agreements could take many forms. One of the things that could happen, for example, cogeneration. You have some large industrial customers. If they decided to self-generate, those would be agreements that power could be taken off in low periods of use and supplied to the rest of the utility. You could see an increase in solar gardens, distributed generation, having contracts with those entities. I mean, our goal, whether we municipalize or not, is to increase the opportunity for distributed generation. Because I think that's something that we see. Obviously, people are interested in doing by how quickly the solar gardens got subscribed to. So that would play a role. The other is that there are what's called independent power producers out in the market that have great resources that they are willing to sell. So I think we are not looking at this point. We haven't modeled any generation that we build and own. We've really relied on the market and what we know is available out there today. That could change depending on pricing, but again, that's how we've looked at it.
The city is continuing to meet with Excel with some community groups as this whole process is going on. What do you think are the most potentially fruitful avenues of cooperation with Excel, and how likely are we to work something out when we haven't been able to work something out so far?
Right. I don't know how likely. I think both sides are open and optimistic. I think the focus will be obviously on the resource mix, choices for distributed generation, how can that be expanded, different energy services. Again, the utility of the future looks at energy as a service, not just a commodity. What are the things that would be meaningful to this community? What types of services, what types of pricing mechanisms, choices in the type of pricing structure you have as a customer? I think more choice will be very important, and having a say-so in the types of electricity, the quality of it or the source of it, and those services is going to be important.
And there's an open house next week for people who want to learn more information?
Yes, on Wednesday evening there's an open house, and we encourage everybody to please attend. It's from 6:30 to 8, I believe, and it's open to the public, and we really want everybody to attend who's interested in this topic.
Is that at the West Senior Center? Okay. Thank you so much for coming in.
Sure, thank you.